And now, you're tuned in to RBLR, the home of Tampa Bay's Reveler Sports.
Welcome into RBLR Sports. My name is Musab, and let me start off by saying this to our listeners and fans. Head up, brothers and sisters. It was one hell of a season, but yes, we also fought. We fought hard, reeled that last game till the final whistle. This whole weekend of playoff football has to go down in history. Honestly, some crazy good football, defensive battles and shootouts. And also, yes, this past weekend was definitely a roller coaster of emotions to share with your family and friends. And I'm going to say this. I got some sharing to do as well, but we can't get down to business without my partner in crime tonight, Jake. Jake, how we doing this fine evening?
I'm doing good, Musa. That was a beautiful intro, I have to say. That was very well said. It was obviously a disappointing ending to the season for us Bucs fans, and not the way we wanted it. But hey, there was a bunch of other teams that kind of went down the same way as you mentioned. It really was an unbelievable weekend of football with every game ending on a walk-off. I mean, when's the last time you saw something like that? So I'm excited to get into it with you, though, as we can go back and recap this game, try to look at what went wrong, and kind of take a little sneak peek into the offseason coming up here, because there is a lot that could be happening here for our Tampa Bay Buccaneers in the next couple of months.
Yes, indeed. And listeners, if you could do us a favor and you want to spread some love to RBLR and listen to us for the next few months or so, or next few years, however you're listening to this, whether it be YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcast, there's probably a follow button, a like button, or even a subscribe button. But also, we are on social media platforms at RBLR Sports. All right. Well, I'll tell you this, Jake. I'm ready to yap about my Bucs, but I want to hear your overall thoughts. This was it, the final chapter of the 2022 Buccaneers book, and it turned out to be, as I already said, it turned out to be a roller coaster of emotions. Oh my gosh, it was like every single minute, it was like my mood was changing.
Yeah, this really was a wild game, wasn't it? I mean, you came into it and you looked at it and said, well, it looks like the Rams are just going to run away with this one. They were dominating the game. They were, running all over the Bucs. The Bucs couldn't make adjustments, even out of that second half a little bit. The Rams were just going to town. And then, the Buccaneers start to do what they do best with good old Tommy Brady. He knows how to do it better than anybody. Starts to make a comeback. They start to capitalize on some of the Rams' mistakes, and they nearly pull off some miraculous comeback. And unfortunately, it just falls short after tying the game and letting Cooper Kupp deep down the field, and they eventually kicked that game-winning field goal. But it really was, especially at the end of the game. I mean, those last, 4 or 5 minutes were just back and forth, up and down emotions, and it was unbelievable that they went and tied the game, and then it just deflating when you saw that ball go deep downfield and eventually set up for that game-winning field goal.
Right on. For me, I was just thinking, when I was walking out the restaurant or the sports bar, I was thinking, wow, what a game. And I'll tell you this, Jake and listeners, yes, it stings. But the Bucs overcame a lot just throughout that game itself and throughout this whole season. It was like every single week, we had like a new player was down with an injury or so, or even COVID. But we still found a way to end up with the second seed. And the fact that we came back from being down 27-3, that's crazy. And that shows you why Tom Brady's the GOAT, but also why our Buccaneers, they're the champs last year, and they were coming in hot this year. So listen, although we lost, I'm still really proud of this team and their performance in the last game. And I feel like it's just so easy to be like, oh my God, I can't believe we lost, especially with an ending like that. But you got to remember, we have been facing and we continue to face throughout even the game itself a lot of adversity. All right, we're playing without one of the best right tackles in the NFL, without Godwin, and even without AB. All right, so and even some of our own players are a little bit banged up. So the fact that we were able to come back and actually have a chance at winning this, that's what makes me happy. Unfortunately, I feel like no one was really expecting anyone to take advantage of 40 seconds like that. Everyone was like, "Oh snap, 2 minutes left." Tom Brady, all right, the show is yours. He thought maybe, all right, he can. He has enough time. He cranked out a touchdown, but I guess 40 seconds was enough for the Rams. So for me, I mean, my takeaway was just that it was good, and I know we're gonna go a little bit more in depth with this as well very soon, but it was up and down for both of us. This was a dogfight, and this was an exemplary game of a playoff game. This was a rivalry that's developed now, and the fact that we didn't just get demolished, that's a win itself. And overall, listen, I'm optimistic. We'll run it back, however it be. No anxiety is gonna fix the future, and no guilt is gonna fix the past. So I'm taking it day by day, and that's really about it. But what I do want to know is, Jake, if you have anything else to add, by all means, please do so. But let's kind of start out with a little on the positive note. All right, and did you have an RBLR moment, something that said, "Hey, listen, okay, yeah, whatever, Musab, we lost, but hey, you know what? I'm really glad I saw that."
Ah, man, there were a couple of them. I feel like in this game, but I think one of the special moments had to be that that last fumble recovery that the Bucs had to eventually go down and eventually get the game tying touchdown when Akers runs up the middle on that 3-yard run, and then it was recovered by Levante David. I mean, that was just such a huge play. You thought the Rams are just going to run the clock out here and eventually get down, and the comeback would fall short, and then the Bucs defense, finds a way. Hey, kind of like our Tampa Bay Lightning, right? The Tampa Bay findaways. It was the Tampa Bay Buccaneer findaways. That doesn't really work as well with their name, but they found a way, and they got that fumble and gave Brady the ball to eventually drive down and score that tying touchdown. So I think that would be my moment right there. That was awesome to see, because that was one of the most exciting plays, I think, for Bucs fans all around, when you thought, it looked like the game was going to be over, and then just life came flying back into that stadium and get everybody super excited when they knew that Tom Brady was going to have a chance to drive down that field and score that game-tying touchdown.
Jay, great minds think alike. That's exactly how I was feeling. 2 minutes left. We just got that fumble recovery, and I'm sitting at the bar, and I look to my left, and I give the biggest smirk, because as soon as I give a smirk, Tom Brady's on the TV on the big screen, and everyone knows it's all eyes on Brady, and every one of those Rams fan in the bars or wherever they were around the whole world, they were all feeling scared. All right. So for me, I was like, "Oh snap! Are we about to witness something special?" So, and that's exactly what we did. We racked up a touchdown from that, and oof, when I say that, the sports bar I was at was actually going wild, and there was a bunch of these Bostonians, all these locals, rooting for Tom. Well, I'm not lying. It was like the whole bar. I'm not gonna lie. I was also saying it as well. We were all hyped up. So that was my RBLR moment. That's, sure, again, it was a sting, but there's some moments throughout this whole season, personally, I won't forget, and that's one of them, is when I looked my buddy to the left. Tom Brady's on the big screen. I give him a smirk, and I say, "You know what? I think we about to tie this bad boy up, huh? What you think?" And he goes, "I think so, Musab. I'm praying." So that was my RBLR moment. All right, well, Jake, let's get down and dirty. Let's get back to business. Rams recap. It's the last one. So tell me how you feel. This was the most important one as well. So, what are some key things that you saw, whether it be good or bad? Just some really important things that that you got out from that game.
One thing I will say I was impressed with the Bucs to try and keep the good things rolling right now was the way the offense rallied. that whole saga with Antonio Brown and losing him, and a lot of people thought that that was going to be an issue for the Buccaneers, losing Antonio Brown, losing Chris Godwin down to injury, and how are they going to the battle back with all of these injuries? They're losing a lot of their firepower here, but it really, you couldn't tell when the Bucs started to make their comeback. Yes, in the first half, they struggled, but the whole team struggled. But once they started to get things going, Gronk and Mike Evans were on another level again, and they were just rolling around out there, catching balls, driving down the field. That was really impressive, and I think something to hang your hat on and say, hey, look, we can clearly still drive down the field and score points when we need to, even without some of our top players in Antonio Brown and Chris Godwin. Hopefully he gets back and re-signs with the Bucs, which you guys will get into more later down this offseason. But the biggest issue I think I noticed with the Bucs is the defense, and that secondary specifically. I think that it kind of got exposed when they weren't able to get a lot of pressure on Matthew Stafford, and he was able to have a little bit of time in the pocket. That's when the secondary started to fall apart, and they were able to throw balls downfield and get those big plays, just like it happened on the last play of the game to Cooper Kupp. Cooper Kupp, had 189 yards in this game and a touchdown. That you just can't have that in big games like that. So I think that might be their biggest thing they're going to need to address heading into this offseason is that secondary. Granted, they were dealing with a lot of injuries this season, but, every team is going to have those types of injuries, and you have to find ways to overcome. It's like, Bill Belichick made famous, right? Next man up. It's all about that next man up mentality, and the Bucs, unfortunately, that secondary struggled when they weren't able to get pressure on the quarterback, and that was the biggest red flag to me in this game, and it ended up costing them late.
Yes, indeed. Piggybacking off of what you're saying about the secondary, yeah, I mean, it was a little unsatisfactory to see someone like Cooper Kupp rack up like 180 something yards. But what I kind of get out from this is I'm just thinking, well, there needs to be a time as soon as possible that we need to figure out when we all know who we need to lock up. Then how can we make sure that we actually execute that properly? All right. This wasn't like, this isn't someone like, Kendall Blanton, all right, who's racking up 180 yards out of nowhere, all right? No one would expect that, all right? No one even expected him rack up a touchdown during this game. But what I will say is when the Bucs knew that Cooper Kupp is a threat, all right, he is a big, big threat to the whole league. You have to find ways to, lock him down, contain him, all right? So being that we are such a great team, all right, this was an expectation I had, all right? If we're talking to the Lions or Jets, I'll just cut them some slack or whatever, but this is the Buccaneers we're talking about, our Super Bowl champions. So if we're trying to run it back, we got to succeed on every single one of those kind of small things as well. So that's kind of my first thing was, the secondary was lacking indeed. To see someone like Cooper Kupp show out like that, embarrass us, it stung indeed. But also for me was just the kind of the slow start. Offense in this game was very up and down, mostly down, especially in the beginning. But listen, O-line was getting worked on both ends. They just blew up a lot of opportunities to score points as well. Brady did all he could. Mike and Lenny were great as well, but after them, it seemed like there were some lack of weapons. Gronk came in clutch as well. So the fact that on both ends it was kind of a slow start. Even our defense, they started extremely slow. They had almost no answer for Los Angeles. But in the second half, obviously, hey, listen, they figured it out. They kind of ended the day with 4 takeaways, which is definitely the big reason why we came back and tied it. But then again, on the final drive, something happened. I'll tell you, someone is responsible. So I'm not going to be pointing fingers, but I will say that in the final drive, they kind of folded. To be aware of 40 seconds and you're not trying to execute that properly, it seemed a little odd to me and definitely raised my eyebrows before I walked out of that sports bar. But unfortunate ending. But hey, listen, they deserve props for bringing us back as well. So I mean, those are kind of just my first points, kind of with the slow start battle of the defense. But hey, the fact that we came back, I think makes me want to, give a shout out to our key players who overall did well. I mean, first being the one and only Tom Brady, but hey, Mike and, playoff Lenny also helped him out big time. Really, really happy to see playoff Lenny kind of come back from that injury and immediately help us out. That was needed indeed. And every time I watch him, it's like I see this really special kind of thing where he just continues to keep on driving. All right, even when the guy gets him, he keeps on fighting and getting it. All right, and you know what? There was a few times we actually got a first down because of that reason. So, yeah, big shout out to Mike Evans, Tom Brady, playoff Lenny. But I mean, is there anyone else I'm missing, or anything else you want to add on to that as well? Just I want to give a shout out to our key players as well, and I mean, Jake, is there anyone on the defense as well who kind of came in mad clutch, or who seemed like a key player to you to kind of help us come back?
Well, I think Gronk also deserves a little bit of shout out as well. He was pretty fantastic in these playoff games. He's been great ever since coming back to the Bucs. Especially as I mentioned earlier when losing Godwin and then Antonio Brown, you needed some of your other weapons to step up, and Gronk did that. Had a couple of big plays in that game. He's just a reliable guy to throw the ball to for Tom Brady to pick up, on those third down conversions. Quarterbacks love to go to their tight ends, and that's exactly what they were able to do there. And then, on the defensive side of things, obviously, the big stars, Levante David, like you got the fumble recovery in the game, as mentioned earlier. And then a lot of the defensive line was really good in this game and holding Cam Akers and making sure that the Rams weren't able just to run out the clock at the very end of the game. And that was really good for the Bucs. The defensive line did very well. The biggest issue, as we mentioned a couple times now, was the secondary. That was the only really sore spot, I think, for the most part. Vita Vea is also a star in the making. I've really loved what I've seen from him, and he's a young guy, too, that will only get better over the next couple of years. He made a couple of big plays late in this game as well, so those big defensive guys up front made some big plays to keep the Bucs in it late in the Rams game.
I agree with you. I definitely want to give a shout out to our defense as well. Obviously, definitely wasn't a hot start for our Bucs in the beginning, but the defense definitely picked up big time in the second half. But I also do want to talk about, on offense and defense, kind of first of all, the overall pressure. A lot of pressure on Tom Brady with kind of this whole pass protection issue. All right, because I'm thinking, how is kind of McVay and the rest of the coaching staff going to take advantage of our Bucs offense? Listen, we already got a banged up offensive line. We were missing Tristan Wirfs. We had two guys who weren't completely 100%, Ryan Jensen and Josh Wells. And I'm thinking, are they going to be able to handle the LA pass rush? So, these are definitely some big things to think about before, the game even started, to keep their season alive. So, that was kind of a big struggle the way I saw it. Jake, I'll tell you this on offense and defense, because I know you're also talking about the secondary, and I want to add on to that secondary. There's this domino effect I see. When one thing and something important, pass protection and secondary, offense and defense, when one thing like that kind of just falls or is lacking, I feel like that contributes to other things, and then everything kind of just gets a little messy. All right. Now, poor pass protection messes up Brady, his rhythm, doesn't give him enough time, bangs him up as well. You saw that bloody lip. So those kind of things, it just, it's like enough is enough. How much more can I see this happen? And, I'll tell you this, it was happening like spontaneously here and there. It wasn't like, oh my God, like get these guys out. This is a completely horrible first quarter. It's all right, hey, but then again, and then hey, okay, and then it was like up and down, up and down. So yeah, I didn't really like that. But yeah, then again on the secondary, whatever it was, lack of communication or just poor execution of coverage or man to man, whatever it be, because of that, other things were struggling. We had to go for a different approach. seeing someone like Cooper Kupp just embarrass us like that, especially with that his first touchdown, that was like, oh my God, I can't believe he was even open like that. As soon as you catch it, you're expecting, all right, well, hey, someone tackle him or knock him out or whatever. But no, he caught it and then boom, runs away, jukes out another defender, and then for the touchdown. So when something like that happens, it screws up the whole defense. Then people like Todd Bowles are thinking, all right, well, hey, listen, we got to change it up or something. We got to do something about it. But then again, maybe they also don't change some things. Or thinking, all right, well, you know what, it'll work the next time or whatever. So domino effect is the way I kind of saw it on the pass protection and on the secondary. But is there anything that you wanted to add, or maybe some other things that maybe have contributed to this whole domino effect? Things that kind of cause us to be slowed down at times when we really needed to get points, Jake.
Well, you mentioned the domino effect in the offensive line, and I actually want to go back to last week's game against the Philadelphia Eagles. So obviously Tristan Wirfs not playing in this game against the Rams. I was very surprised that they allowed him to come back into that game against the Eagles when he was clearly shaken up. The Bucs were up big at that point, and I have to sit there and I wonder, why are you letting him back into the game where he ended up re-injuring himself? Or I don't know, maybe re-injure is not the right word, but he tried to go back in. It didn't work. He went back down again and had to leave the game. And you wonder, if he would have stayed out and you would have took the precautionary route, was he able to play in that game against the Rams? And the domino effect, right? So now that he wasn't able to play against the Rams, and you had the backup in there, the Rams were able to take advantage of that. Then Tom Brady was struggling a little bit in that first half. So that was something big for me that I go back and look at from the coaching side of things, is why did they let him back in that game against the Eagles? You need to rest your guys. I know it's win and go home, but the Bucs, let's be honest, were running all over the Eagles in that game. So that was something that surprised me a lot, and I think it might have contributed a little bit there to the Bucs struggling early in this first half, and Tom Brady having a lot of pressure on him. So that's something I wonder about, and if it would have made a big difference. It could not have, who knows, but that was something that I thought was not a good decision from the Buccaneers, and it definitely didn't help. But it's tough too when you have all those injuries that you're dealing with, and for these rookies or just second string guys to come in and try and fill a role. There's a lot that goes into being an offensive lineman. It's not just go out there and block the guy in front of you. First of all, you're going up against these really good defensive linemen, especially for the Rams. And then there's the snap count and working with Tom Brady, especially for centers and all that kind of stuff. It's you can't just throw a guy in there and expect him to do really good and protect Tom Brady. But that was something, looking at the domino effect that comes to mind for me, and wondering if, how big of an effect did that have on the Buccaneers, even from last week playing against the Eagles.
I see what you're saying, Jake, but I guess I'm also thinking, and I'm on the same boat. But then again, when I was actually watching the Eagles game, and when I first saw Wirfs kind of, had to step out for a sec, I'm like, this ain't good, because that's our best. It's one of our best offensive linemen out there, and then now another guy's got to come in, a backup, and then obviously it immediately looked ugly when he was out. Josh Wells immediately kind of gave up a few kind of important plays or whatever. So I hate to play devil's advocate, but what I was kind of thinking, I guess, is maybe perhaps we were kind of just desperate, or maybe it was kind of gut decision. Maybe Tristan Wirfs himself was thinking, obviously the whole go big or go home kind of thing. To be honest, I'm gonna tell you this, Jake. I was kind of happy he came back, and I didn't realize that he kind of was hurting himself just more and more. He just making it worse. I was thinking, okay, maybe he just had to shake it off or whatever. The trainers took care of it, or he'll have some rest. He'll be fine. Because it's a little scary knowing that all right, well, Wirfs is out in mid game, and listen, we are running over them, but with the games we've had this season, Jake, and anything can happen. They kind of came back the last time we played them, before playoffs. So I was just thinking, listen, we need every single one of those guys in there if we can. So it is definitely a domino effect. I will agree with you on that. It was an unfortunate domino effect, or personally something I wasn't too aware of immediately that would lead to a domino effect. But um, yeah, you know what, Jake? Then I mean, perhaps maybe these kind of things were also contributing factors throughout our regular season. And I guess it maybe makes you think, well, uh, we got to start, looking for maybe more reliable backups or better backups. If this is something that's raising our eyebrows, or if this is something that we're thinking, hey, Tristan, you think you can kind of maybe fight through it or something? Maybe, I don't know. Maybe that's what happened. I don't know, Jake, but what I do know is it was an unfortunate domino effect, and it was tough to see. But Jake, any kind of from the first quarter, second, third, fourth quarter, kind of any overall thoughts? Kind of just some things that some kind of just big takeaways, something that is relevant to our upcoming season next year.
Well, the nicest thing that I take away from this game is the adjustments that they're able to make. It's a good sign that the coaches were able to, make those adjustments in the second half and start to take back that game. So that's a positive sign looking forward. There were a lot of positives in this game for the Bucs. A big question now, though, moving forward is, what coaches are still going to be here. We have a couple of coaches that are interviewing down there in Jacksonville for a potential head coaching job. So, that could shake a lot of things up for the Bucs. But, overall, it was tough to get off to that slow start, but they did have a lot of good in this game, especially in that second half. And if they can, assuming Tom Brady ends up coming back, which is another big question mark, which is almost why it's kind of hard to look at the season moving forward. But they've got the pieces there. They were able to show in that second half that they can make adjustments and they can make it work, and they can still make a run at a Super Bowl. But unfortunately, it was just a little bit too late getting off to that slow start and then that ultimate ending. But you have to be happy with how the team made adjustments and that they didn't give up on this game, because they definitely could have just laid down and died and let the Rams take it in a big way. But they kept fighting the whole way through.
They kept fighting indeed. My kind of big takeaway was, well, first I also want to agree with you that, listen, what I learned was, we got the pieces. We make the best out of every situation we can. Honestly, throughout the whole season, I really do think we did. And I guess for me, it's just more about, strengthening our core. Is just overall making sure that we're always stacked or whatever. Because there was some situations throughout this whole season, even during the playoffs as well, that it was like these random pop-up, like, oh snap, listen, we got to do something now, or all right, well, let's just hope for the best, just because of whoever had to go in or whoever had to go out, whoever got injured, etc., etc. But what I also want to add on was, just because this loss stung so much, and just because we just lost by a field goal, I watched the game again, saw the highlights again as well, and there were times where we just honestly we played silly, we gave up points slash we wasted opportunities. So it just makes you think that these slow starts, maybe they only happened a few times, maybe they popped up here and there, Jake, and then we talked about it, and then we didn't see it anymore. We're all happy. But what I do have to say is that the fact that the slow start even occurred again in the playoffs against the Rams, it's fine if we have a slow start against the Lions or Jets, because I'm like, all right, whatever, But, you got to be on your tippy toes at all times. And the fact that they're, running away with it, it just kind of makes me raise my eyebrows slash it makes me think, well, how can we just execute just a little bit better? Is that what we got to do just to win the game? Because we fight back so well, but why can't we just defend ourselves in the beginning well, So that's kind of just my overall takeaway in regards to our upcoming season, or just the upcoming future for our Buccaneers. But hey, last kind of thing, which is overall kind of, Mr. Unsung Hero, I'll call him Mr. Playoffs. If you have another name for him as well, Jake, feel free to add on to that as well. But who was your Mr. Playoffs? it doesn't have to be a star. Someone who, yeah, sure, hey, listen, they balled out in the regular season, but someone that kind of made you think, well, hey, you know what? I'm glad that they're doing well for us during the playoffs. Listen, we needed this guy, and I'm glad, that he did well.
Well, I think the easy answer is probably Mike Evans, just because, as I mentioned earlier, the Bucs lost a couple of their big receiving threats, and he continued to ball out in the playoffs at 236 yards in the postseason and 2 touchdowns. He was fantastic for the Bucs. He was a guy that I remember years back saying, "Man, he just can't stop dropping balls. What is up with this guy? Maybe he's not who we think he is, but he's been so good for the Bucs, these last couple of years, and has come up big in so many different games. So, it seems like an easy choice to pick Mike Evans, but I truly do think he was one of the top guys. Tom Brady gets a lot of the credit, for the GOAT that he is, but a lot of credit needs to go to Mike Evans. And even when the Bucs went down a couple of guys in that receiver room, he stepped up and still made a lot of big plays for the Buccaneers in the postseason.
Indeed. You know what, Jake, I'll tell you this. Unfortunately, no matter how well he does, he's still going to have some haters, which I really don't understand. But, oh, yeah, listen, I agree with you big time on, yeah, Mike Evans has been balling out, and especially when we needed him more than ever in the playoffs, he showed out. The chemistry between him and Brady it's dangerous for our opponents. But you know what? I want to give a shout out myself, and I want to nominate or dedicate my Mr. Playoffs to our D line. Sure, it was a little slow start during this game, but they were just completely dominating the Eagles. And also, even in the second half as well, we were able to take advantage of every single opportunity we had, and we were aggressive. I really like every single one of those guys, And, I actually remember, unfortunately, we got a flag, oh, you know what? I take that back. It wasn't our flag. The Rams got a flag for holding, and I think it was at the beginning of the game. It was a holding, and refs were blowing the whistle. Or as soon as the refs blowing the whistle, man, we had 3 of our guys like slamming Cam Akers on the ground. So it just shows you that those guys don't stop till the final whistle. They don't stop until it's all right. All right, plays over. So for me, just seeing that dynamic squad being able to dominate game by game. Not everything or not every game or every single scenario is going to be perfect, but for me, I was really satisfied with their performance throughout the whole season, but also during the playoffs as well. And it's just really nice to see that we have a nice, strong core. It's reliable. Things are always going to happen, and our opponents will get opportunities, Jake. But we're a scary defense. The whole league knows that. And listeners, if you don't know that already, we are, and that's why they are my Mr. Playoffs. All right. Well, the last thing I want to go over, and I want to call this, where the road may take us. But also, listeners, where does your wallet take you? Because I'll tell you this, liking and subscribing is free, but if you need some new threads, you can support this podcast by heading over to shop.rblrsports.com and checking out all the designs we got cooked up for you. Well, we got shirts in colors of our beloved teams. We got designs honoring our football, hockey, baseball teams. And I'm going to also tell you this. Use the promo code CANNONS for 10% off your order. That's CANNOS, CANNONS. 10% off your order. All right. And I'll tell you this, there's a link right in the description as well. So, hey, scratch our back, we'll scratch yours. And hey, listen, maybe one of your friends or family needs some new threads as well. So maybe you can get them a gift. All right. Well, hey, listen, Jake, where the road shall take us. There's a lot to talk about this offseason, and we will in our upcoming episodes. But, overall thoughts, what are kind of the big things that you're thinking about in regards to this offseason?
Well, obviously, the big question is Tom Brady going to return? His post-game comments kind of made it sound like his wife is tugging at him here and saying, hey, it's time to take a step back and enjoy some time with your family. And if Tom Brady is going to retire, that changes a lot of things for the Buccaneers. You know, if he stays, they still have a lot of big pieces in place. They can re-sign guys to another short-term deals that they've got right now that are heading into free agency and say, hey, let's go one more time. Let's make another run at it. See if we can end this on a high note and win another Super Bowl. Because they proved this year that they can win plenty of games and make runs deep into the Super Bowl. So, but if Tom Brady is gone, then you kind of have to think about, how are you going to rebuild this team? It's going to look a lot different without Tom Brady on there. The Bucs struggled a lot when they did not have a good quarterback. So, and the question will be is, how is that going to look with either Kyle Trask, or is it going to be Blaine Gabbert, or is it going to be another guy? Are we going to go out and have to draft somebody this year or next year even? How is that all going to look? So it's hard to say what the road looks ahead. Basically, the best way I could describe it is that there's a straight path, and then it splits off into two, right? You've got the right turn is Tom Brady stays. We make one more run at it and go for that another Super Bowl there, or the left turn, and it's rebuilding and going out and letting some of these older veteran guys go and signing some younger guys and building around a quarterback of the future, whether that's Kyle Trask, Blaine Gabbert, or maybe somebody completely different. Who knows? Maybe one of those crazy conspiracy theories happens and Aaron Rodgers comes down here and signs in Tampa Bay, which would be absolutely wild. But it's hard to say, and a lot of it depends on Tom Brady. And you're probably going to be losing, a guy like Brian Leftwich, or even maybe Todd Bowles. He's been rumored up there a couple times for a head coaching position. So there's going to be some changes there, but a lot of it depends on Tom Brady and his decision.
So I guess I want to know, Jake, do you think that if Tom Brady, doesn't run it back with us, that is it really more of a rebuilding kind of year or phase for us, or is it more kind of reloading? Now, because I say this because Bruce Arians himself said that, we're not rebuilding, we're reloading. And I just, and what I mean by that exactly, to get a little bit more specific, is, okay, yeah, so Tom Brady doesn't come back, and then, that, I guess, obviously maybe create some other opportunities with our money to do some other things. Maybe, yeah, let go of our older guys as well, or maybe keep them. I don't know. But what I do want to know is, how much of a factor is someone like Tom Brady leaving in regards to whatever you want to call it, rebuilding or reloading? Do you think, you can even give me like a percentage, like change-wise, how much change is needed or will happen from the top of your head that you're thinking?
I want to be honest with you, Miss. I think it's a big change if Tom Brady leaves. I think he makes that much of a difference. They say the quarterback is the most important position in sports. And again, I go back to, I was not a big Jameis Winston supporter. I was a big opponent of his, being a Florida fan. My bias shows up a little bit. He was big obviously being an FSU, but listen, the Bucs struggled when they didn't have a guy like Tom Brady, and as soon as Tom Brady showed up, this whole team changed. They were able to make a run into the Super Bowl, win the Super Bowl, make another decent run this year. So to put a number on it, honestly, I think you see, 67-70% kind of a change with this team if Tom Brady leaves. I think I don't think you can really kind of just reload unless you go out there and trade for some kind of maybe Kirk Cousins or Ryan Tannehill type of quarterback that might be available depending on what happens this offseason. Then maybe you can make another run into the postseason with all the guys you have. But if you're looking to throw in, let's say a guy like Kyle Trask, who is a second-round pick out of from Florida, he's the type of guy that you're going to have to build around for the next couple of years. He's not the guy that you can just kind of reload with. I mean, he could jump into things and be really good for the Buccaneers, which would be awesome. I personally would love to see that, but that's just not the case. And the thing I'll say, Musab, is, listen, Bucs fans, you got to appreciate everything that Brady has done for this organization as well. Obviously it's going to be disappointing if he does go and retire and you have to go through a couple rebuilding years, but the fact that we got a Super Bowl out of it, we're able to really, throw Champa Bay into everybody's face and yes, we are winners. We were only a piece away. Enjoy this time is what I'm trying to say. There was a lot of good that came out of this, and there might be a couple rebuilding years ahead, but don't fray. We had a lot of good years with Tom Brady, and if you do the rebuilding right, it's not going to take long, and who knows, maybe Kyle Trask could be our quarterback of the future already. We just don't know it yet.
Yeah, you know what? There's a lot of things we don't know, and that includes Tom Brady, whether he's gonna stay or not, or if Kyle Trask is gonna be our new guy. But for me, just from the top of my head, I'm thinking, well, first of all, if he stays, I mean, that's gonna be amazing, and I mean, that's a whole different kind of story, and it's for me, it's completely just reloading, and I mean. That is a huge factor indeed. I see it as like a 50%. I mean, he is a very, very important key player. And I want to add like another 20, 25 with Todd Bowles and Leftwich as well, even. That's going to be interesting if they both got to go. So for me, I'm thinking, well, if he doesn't stay, then we're going to have to make the best out of it. And for me, I think that's going to be. You know what? I think we should reload instead of rebuild. I don't want to kind of be the bad guy or whatever, the bearer of bad news, but listeners, this day was bound to come. That it's not going to be all sunshine and rainbows. Tom Brady's going to have to say goodbye to us. There's going to be a year where we don't win the Super Bowl, unfortunately. So, you know what? Sure, we have to throw. We might have to throw in someone. Maybe we get some really good backup. I don't know, but what I do know is only time will tell, and I think it's just experience. Um, you know, uh, I didn't go to UF, but I am a huge supporter of Kyle Trask, Jake, and yeah, I still am a huge supporter of the Trask train. Listeners, I didn't forget about the Trask train. It's still boarding. Should be boarding tonight as well. And it's all year long, the Trask train. It runs all year long. But on the real, though, listen, someone's going to have to take over if Tom Brady doesn't. And sure, it might be a little bit of a messy start. But like his former team, and I just want to give him just a small little shout out. The Pats kind of started a little ugly, and I think Mac Jones was a little scared as well, or whatever you had to go through. But listen, as time goes on, you just kind of pick up on things, and that's just what our quarterback in the future is going to have to do. So,
Good point.
ideally, I don't want too many changes, just because the way I kind of see it is. I kind of just want maybe one new guy, and then people like Mike Evans and Lenny, kind of kind of showing him, hey, this is how we do it, or whatever. We got your back. Um, hey, listen, there have been successful rookies in the past, so I don't see why Kyle Trask can't be successful either. I think it's just having the right kind of players around him. All right, so I'm staying optimistic. If Tom Brady's saying goodbye to us, putting the cleats up, and we'll just have to see what happens. But I will say though is there's only so much I really want to say or can say, just because it is definitely a big factor into what kind of moves we'll be making during this off season as well. So that's kind of just my first kind of question was just on the whole Brady thing. But I also want to talk about just we got a lot of free agents coming up, Jake, and I'm thinking, oh, can we keep them all? Are we able to? Someone like Bruce Arians is thinking, well, hey, listen, we were able to, work some things out, and we were able to keep all the guys last year. So I don't see why we can't. But it's going to be a hard for sure. It's going to be a challenge. So I guess I want to know is with this free agency coming up, and even the draft or whatever. What are just some things regarding just overall positions that you're thinking, or even if you have a player or two on your mind that you're thinking, oh snap, he's a free agent. Well, I hope the Bucs, kind of have an eye on him. They don't just say, "All right, well, toodles." So, is there anyone like that or any position that we should kind of think about?
Well, it's interesting because, I hate to keep saying it, but again, a lot of this depends on what is Tom Brady's decision. Because if Brady comes back, he's obviously going to need a bigger contract. He's usually pretty good at restructuring things, though, so they can bring everybody back. But that affects the salary cap in a pretty big way. But if you go with a guy, let's just say Kyle Trask, for argument's sake here, you can probably bring a lot more of these guys back when it comes to his salary cap perspective. I think the big name on this list is pretty obvious for everybody, and that's Chris Godwin. He's had a really good last couple of seasons. Unfortunately, had that season-ending injury, and I think a lot of fans hope to bring him back. And that's probably the number one guy on that list. We talked about the defensive line and how good they were, especially in that Rams game late, capitalizing and taking over that game and making some fumbles and recovering those turnovers. You got a couple of guys on that list in Jason Pierre-Paul and Ndamukong Suh, both free agents. They're going to be guys to keep your eye on as well. And then one of the other things too, you got Rob Gronkowski, who's going to be up for contract too. I think his decision largely depends on Brady. He's been with Brady his entire career. So if Brady retires, is Gronk going to stay and keep playing in the NFL? He seems like a guy, from what I've gathered, that probably wants to stay and play another year. Now, will that be in Tampa? I don't know. But he's one I'd like to see the Bucs keep as well, just because he's been really playing some of his best football since he's come back. And from what we've seen out of some of the younger guys like O.J. Howard, I'm just still not sold on them yet. So, those are some of the guys I'd like to see him bring back. And then, but again, a lot of that again depends on Tom Brady. It's really everything comes back to Tom Brady right now. So hopefully Brady doesn't drag his decision out too long, so we don't have to keep wondering how this is all going to play out.
So I guess what you're saying is there's no point of calling it the circle of life. It should just be called the circle of Brady, huh?
Pretty much.
Yeah, no. Hey, listen. Hey, I get what you're saying, Jake. And it's definitely a big factor indeed. And I guess I also want to know is, if he doesn't stay, and how what do you think is going to happen? So if he doesn't stay, and there is a lot more cap space, and we're able to keep a lot more of these guys. Do you think that there's a thought in some of these guys' heads thinking, oof, well, it's going to be an interesting upcoming year for sure. Obviously, losing someone like Tom Brady. All right, you best believe that it's a if Tom Brady is not going to be with us, it's a promise that it's not going to be all sunshine and rainbows. And I think the whole world would know that if they don't know it already. Jake, what do you think of this? Do you think that there may be some thought in some of these guys' heads saying, "Do I really want to stay? I mean, listen, I'm doing pretty well, and people have seen me on a Super Bowl team. Could I find an opportunity somewhere else?" And I don't want to invalidate anyone's loyalty or whatever either, but I just want to know is this something that might be like considering?
You're absolutely right to be thinking that, and there's definitely going to be some guys that have that mindset. I think the good news for the Buccaneers is that they did win a Super Bowl. So some of these guys might be sitting there saying, well, I already got one Super Bowl. What's it? I love it here down in Tampa Bay. I love the warm weather. What's the big deal in sticking out a couple of years through a small potential rebuild or reload, whatever you want to call it, and getting back and winning the Super Bowl in a couple of years? But there also might be some guys that just want to keep winning. They like, hey, let's say Chris Godwin, for example, for argument's sake. He knows his services will be highly sought after coming here in free agency, so he might say, I can get a lot of money somewhere and keep competing at a high level if Tom Brady's gone. So, a guy like him could definitely be thinking about that and potentially leave. It's hard to say, what these guys are thinking, but that is definitely going to be a factor if Tom Brady does end up hanging things up and retiring.
Right on. Well, I'll say this, factor or not, for me, the kind of three positions that I'm thinking from the top of my head that I want to focus on in the free agency. First being the fact that we're losing multiple starters, and that's a possibility of even losing guys on our offensive line. Like Ryan Jensen, Alex Kappa, both of these guys are headed into the free agency. Even, Aaron Stinney and Josh Wells. So, yeah, reloading this unit, rebuilding, whatever you want to call it, this unit is going to be needed to be investigated or worked on in the upcoming months. But my next one is the running backs. Fournette, Jones, Bernard, all free agents. So that just leaves Keyshawn Vaughn as our only running back who's going to be on the active roster. So I guess that means maybe Vaughn's going to have a bigger role in 2022. But I'm also going to say this as if none of those guys return, we're going to need to do some work over there. Whether that means, it's not whether that means. That means we're going to need to add some fresh faces for sure. And my last one, because we've been kind of, talking about the secondary, and this is definitely really important. And Carlton Davis is set to be a free agent, Jake, and he's the way I see it. I mean, I don't see why he couldn't be like someone who gets the franchise tag, but we're gonna have to think about some things, because behind people like Sean Murphy Bunting and Jamel Dean, who only are on who still got those rookie deals, there is this huge mystery mark for me with this kind of, there's no proven depth behind, those kind of guys. Sometimes our backups come in clutch. We appreciate that, but this is something to think about. And I only want to say this because of just who we are. This is our Buccaneers. We're the Super Bowl champs. We came really, really far this season, almost won it. So I want to be hard on these guys, and I want to make sure that we have the best of the best, or we also have some reliable, solid depth pieces. So those are kind of my three positions / people that I'm thinking about. You can't forget people like Godwin as well, but I mean, it's spread out across the board with when it comes to free agency. So unfortunately, we're not going to keep all these guys probably, and we're just going to have to make the best out of it. And again, I hate to. I think I just got trapped by you, Jake, and I think I'm literally just about to say. Honestly, we're just gonna wait for Tom Brady, I guess. Because like, my question being is, do these guys want to stay if Brady's not here? I don't know. Yeah, we'll have to think about that. But we'll have to see what Brady does. Same thing with people like Gronk as well. And then I'm gonna say this, even with the guys I've been talking about. All right, if you're Fournette, Jones, and Bernard, and you're thinking, it's one thing to think, I don't mind being third string if I'm playing for Tom Brady. But if I'm third string and I'm playing for, I'll just say anyone else, respectfully anyone else, then I'm thinking, oof, am I, first of all, am I on a championship team? Am I going to get some playing time? Am I valuable? This, that, or whatever. Every single one of our running backs were super valuable just because of the injuries and COVID, et cetera, et cetera. So that's kind of just my last little kind of point on the whole little free agency spiel for me, is just that there's a lot to consider, and at least those are just my overall takeaways. But there are some big decisions needed to be made by some big people that are going to lead to these kind of answers. And that's kind of really about it for me. Anything else to add on to our free agency, or just maybe not even free agency, but maybe also I don't know if a possibility, I'll say this, Jake, just because I really want to know is, all right, whatever happens in the off season, and sure, we make some moves here and there in all these positions. From the top of your head, gut reaction, you're thinking, after that game, you're thinking, if there's one position that you want to draft for, what position is that?
Oh, it's a tough question. I think you got to go with the secondary, right? I think that was the biggest question mark that the Bucs had this season, and it came back to bite them a couple of times, especially with the injuries. You've got a couple of guys in the secondary on the free agent market, so I think that would be the number one priority. That or the offensive line. I know we drafted a couple offensive linemen recently, but as we kind of talked about those injuries, they affected the Bucs largely in this game against the Rams a little bit, as we talked about in that first half. So maybe in the later rounds, you want to look at the offensive line. So secondary and offensive line are probably my two biggest ones that jump off the page to me. Running back could be another one too, as you mentioned. A lot of guys coming off of the team here in free agency. If they end up leaving, maybe you want to try and pick up a couple running backs here in the future in the early rounds, depending on who's available and what's going on with the draft. It's hard to make predictions there, but those are the three. I'll give you, those are my three positions that I would say that you have to look at. And I think we really came up with a good idea of it's the circle of Tom. It's what it is, because a lot of it depends on his decision. Hopefully he makes it relatively quickly for the Buccaneers, though, so they can start thinking about that kind of stuff, and it doesn't handcuff them late in free agency or something like that. I don't think that'll happen. I think we'll know relatively sooner rather than later. But those are my three positions that I would look at heading into the draft.
Jake, I'm going to say this. I'm going to dedicate my Buccaneers draft party when it happens during the summer. My theme of the party, I don't know where I'm going to be. I don't know who I'm going to be with, but there's one thing I know, and the theme of the party, whether he stays with us or not, the theme of the party is going to be called the Circle of Tom.
That's got to be the episode name, right? The Circle of Tom.
The Circle of Tom, exactly. So, and so when my little Circle of Tom party's happening, aka the draft, or what I'm thinking about is positions-wise is first of all, secondary. The way I see it is, listen, as long as you find like the fastest, strongest, whatever kind of guy, just your prime kind of healthy DB, then all right, great. Now that's you kind of passed the big step. Now honestly, now it's just really gonna come down to whoever we draft or whatever. Is that person gonna be able to kind of pick up on these things? Do they have kind of are they clever? Are they smart? Are they a quick learner? Because welcome to the NFL, my friend. This is not college ball no more. You are no longer playing with 18, 19-year-old boys. You are playing with grown men. All right, grown men. So yeah, that's my first kind of position. And then I mean I only had two, and my second one would just be O-line as well. It don't matter who you are, whether you're Tom Brady or whether you're Jake Ricker or Musab Tariq. You need to be protected at all costs, and that means that your offensive linemen need to be good. They need to be, just good, big, hungry dogs. That's what I'll call it, all right? Big, hungry dogs. They got to protect us, all right? So, those are just my two positions from the top of my head that I was thinking, all right, well, hey, secondary O-line, all right? Because those are my two little domino effect positions as well. Well, I'll say this, listeners, thank you for your time. We really do appreciate it. It's been one hell of a roller coaster indeed. And we also want to say that, before we end this podcast, if you could do us a favor, if you have not already, and follow us at RBLR Sports if you enjoy our content. We're on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook as well. That is at RBLR Sports. And also, hey, don't forget to like and subscribe to our podcasts, all right? We're on Spotify, Apple, Google Podcasts. Oh, you don't have those? Not a problem. We got iHeartRadio, YouTube, and you know what? Other major podcast platforms. All right. So, hey, Jake, do you have any kind of final remarks? Overall thoughts, or just everything that's happened? How do you feel?
Well, it was disappointing that our Bucs couldn't pull off the great comeback and be getting ready for the conference championship once again this year. But listen, they had a great run this year. They had the Super Bowl last year. They're still technically the defending Super Bowl champions. Nobody's won it just quite yet, so he still can hold on to that title for a little bit longer. But I will say this, my final thoughts here is that I think no matter what happens, if Tom Brady comes back, you can make another run at it one more time. And even if he doesn't, I think that the Bucs can put together some nice pieces, even if it means, having a couple of mediocre years here and really building something around a young quarterback like a Kyle Trask or somebody else as well, and getting right back to the spot that they're in right now. and becoming one of the top teams once again in the NFL.
Right on. I'm right there with you, Jake. I couldn't agree with you more. And all I'm gonna say is, we here at RBLR, we can't thank you enough for giving us a chance, giving us a listen, and spreading the word of RBLR as well. But also staying fired up week by week. All right. Surely it was a season full of all kinds of feelings, and I'll say this: it was a strong finish. Don't you forget that. This first Sunday with no Tampa Bay football is gonna hit different. What you think, Jake?
Oh, absolutely. I'm not going to know what to do with myself now. Luckily, we got our good old boys in blue, Tampa Bay Lightning, still rolling in their season, so we can make sure to watch them. But not having the Bucs this Sunday is going to be disappointing. At least we don't have to stress this Sunday, right?
Exactly. Hey, listeners, I'll tell you this as well. Don't be sad that it's over. Be happy that we had a great year. But also, don't be sad because just like the players, we here at RBLR, we stay putting in work. Preseason, regular season, playoffs, offseason, it don't matter. All right? Just because it's going to get quiet at Ray J doesn't mean you can't have fun in the Bay. All right? That's all for this episode. Thanks again, listeners. And as always, go Bucs.
Thank you for tuning into this presentation by RBLR Sports. On your way out of the stadium, please remember to like and subscribe.